Welcome to the Flash Finds podcast, the world's fastest podcast where we explore how Facebook can help you with the stuff you're into. I'm your host, Emma Rogue, and today I'm with creator and chef Chris Cho. Chris, what do people get out of your reels?
So people are super intimidated when they want to first try cooking Korean food, but through Facebook Reels, I make it super fun and easy and accessible within a 30 to 60 second video.
Reels is the cheat code. Thanks, Chris. See you next time on the Flash Finds podcast, all about discovering the stuff on Facebook you care about. Bye.
Hey everybody, welcome to this special episode of the Film and Whiskey Podcast.
Yeah, we're back with another bonus episode. We're continuing on our My Favorite Movie series.
Yeah.
But this is where one of us, or both of us, sits down with a CEO or an owner or a master distiller of a whiskey distillery, and we're trying to kind of marry this film and whiskey thing. We talk to them about their process, their product, what it's like to be in the business, but then also, hey, what's your favorite movie? Let's sit down over a glass of whiskey and let's talk about it. And so far, we have been sticking to kind of local distilleries, right? Brad and I
to
Ohio.
Ohio.
Brad and I are Northeast Ohio guys. I mean, you're living in Columbus now, but you've been grandfathered in, right? And so today we are going to take a trip to Wooster, Ohio, which is in Northeast Ohio, kind of a smaller town. And in this little town of Wooster, Ohio, we have found an incredible distillery that's a father-son team. They call it Minglewood Distilling Company. Now, Minglewood is owned by a guy named Mark Morrison, and he is the founder, the owner, the CEO, and the master distiller. And it's just him and his son, and they're turning out some fantastic bourbon down there. The really cool thing, Brad, about the interview that we did, I sat down with him a few weeks ago, and we talked about his favorite movie. Care to take a guess?
I have no idea.
No idea. His favorite movie is The Shawshank Redemption.
The Shawshank Redemption.
And the cool thing is, Wooster is kind of in the general vicinity
of Mansfield, Ohio.
Mansfield, which is where Shawshank was filmed, at an old prison that had been kind of decommissioned and shut down. And so it's his favorite movie because he has so much personal history. And you're going to hear in the interview, he actually worked at the reformatory for a while.
Really?
So, you know, it's something that's super personal to him that when he watches it, it reminds him of, you know, his teenage years working at the reformatory. But again, what a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
You got Morgan Freeman, Tim Robbins. Have you seen Shawshank?
Oh, I've seen Shawshank.
So we're going to throw it over to our interview from a few weeks ago. We sat down in the tasting room at Minglewood Distilling, sipped on some bourbon, and talked about The Shawshank Redemption. Let's listen in. Mark, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming down to Minglewood Distilling Company.
Thanks for having us. We had a really great tour of the facility here just before we hit record. So I'm going to make Mark repeat himself a little bit here. But if you don't mind, why don't you share a little bit with us about the history of the company?
Minglewood Distilling is a fairly young company. We started production about 3 years ago. We currently make bourbon, vodka, gin, rye whiskey, and a cinnamon whiskey, and we're also working on a few other products. The tour that you and I had in the back room was kind of interesting because we are in full mode of making bourbon right now. It's a great time of the year for us to work on bourbon. Nice cold weather for cooling water, but yet also the corn has been freshly harvested and in good cold storage right now, so it's a great time to get into it. So I did like the fact that when you said you rolled into the distillery that you could pick up the aroma. After working here for so many days straight, you know you don't smell that wonderful smell anymore unless you're away for a while, so that was kind of interesting that you were able to pick up on that from outside.
Well, it was that great Ohio corn.
That's right. Thank you. Yeah.
Only the native Ohioans can pick up on that.
Well, thank you.
And I want to kind of hone in on that because you were telling me that almost all of the ingredients that you use are locally sourced and some within just a couple miles of here.
Absolutely. We have some really great local farms that have been, passed on from generation to generation. I believe our rye farmer is in his 4th generation right now. And that is amazing to think that, that we're getting grains from a farm whose father's father bought the farm and started growing rye there, or our corn farmer who is some of his property is within 2 miles of the distillery. To really talk about table or field to table, it almost gets no closer than, that corn being harvested right here in Wayne County within a couple miles of our distillery, made by, 2 Ohio guys that are here, feet on the ground, boots on the ground, making it here. And then our newest thing we're excited about is even our cooper is from the Ohio area, Southern Ohio. So once our product is made, it's going into a Ohio-made barrel with trees that were grown in our Ohio soil. Just to me, that is so exciting that we just permeate Ohio. And I think that's awesome.
That's okay with us.
Thanks.
One of the cool things that you were telling me was about the facility itself, which used to be part of a coal mine. And
absolutely
not just a coal manufacturer, but also ice.
So we're in the old historic Minglewood Coal and Ice building. This building has been around for over 120 years, and they sold coal and ice here. Kind of interesting the way it got its name. When a coal mine is discovered, it's tradition that you have to name it, and if you don't give it a name, that could be bad luck. So the owner, when he bought the coal mine, he went up and seen it, and they asked him, well, what are you going to name it? Well, he hadn't really picked a name at that point, but he knew a couple of things. There was 2 other coal mines in the area. One was Beechwood and one was Oakwood. So he said, you know what, we're going to mingle with these other mines, and we're going to call this one Minglewood. So that's the Minglewood coal mine, how it got its name. That coal was brought here and sold and distributed from this facility. But also we're in an old ice plant. They were one of the first sanitary ice plants in the area, and they would make blocks of ice here, and those blocks of ice would be either picked up. You could come here and pick it up yourself, or you could have it delivered to your home or your business. Prior to the sanitary ice plant, they would have harvested ice from lakes and ponds. And then they would have packed it in sawdust and stored it in this building. The building has very thick block walls and then 8 inches of cork inside there, so they could keep the ice very cold, and then packing it in sawdust, it would make it all the way through the summer months.
So one of the things that we really love about being in Ohio now, Brad and I lived in Kentucky for a while, and we toured all the distilleries down there, and a lot of them are really corporate, and they're the big hitters in the industry. Yeah. The Ohio guys are kind of the underdogs in the industry right now. Things are kind of stacked against Ohioans when it comes to, you can't get the Kentucky straight bourbon certification because we're not in Kentucky.
Right, absolutely.
And it's really cool to just see some of these, I don't even want to call you guys a startup. You've been going for 5 years now almost, but to see these littler underdog distilleries come up and just turn out a great product. You guys
our focus is definitely on quality, not quantity.
Yeah.
And we are just so selective and so careful about our processes. Everything from meeting the farmer and understanding how he's treating his fields and how is he storing his crop. When is he planting it? When is he harvesting it? And even you can just tell by the farmer themselves. Is this the type of person you want to get your product from? Do you trust his quality is going to convey right through to your product? Another kind of fun thing that we like to tell people is, a lot of times you'll hear how special the water is in Kentucky, but you'll never hear them talk about the corn, because the corn doesn't come from Kentucky. Right. It comes from here. Right. It comes from Indiana. So we always kind of we think that's kind of funny that they don't talk about the corn, that they're not getting it from their own yard or their own 2 miles from their distillery.
All the things that give it flavor come from Ohio.
Absolutely. That's right. You got it, Ohio and Indiana.
Well, speaking of underdogs, why don't we go ahead and start talking about the movie that you selected, about your favorite movie?
Well, thank you. Yeah, Shawshank Redemption. I fell in love with that movie a long time ago. And I do have a little interesting information about that is we are in Wooster, Ohio, and Shawshank Redemption was shot in the Mansfield, Ohio area at the Mansfield Reformatory. Well, when I first got out of high school, one of my first jobs was working for a safety company, and I used to go to Mansfield Reformatory, the one that we see in the movie here. And I would work on their fire extinguishers with one of their guards, and we would check the fire extinguishers in the facility. And I still remember to this day how cold and clammy it was in there, and the little nooks and crannies and the dark spots that you always felt like someone could jump out at you.
Sure.
And I even kind of think a little about that when poor Andy Dufresne was in the laundry room and stuff, and he was getting beat up, and they were jumping out of the corners and stuff at him. I still remember that. So that facility.
Now, how long at that point had the prison been shut down? Because it stood empty for a number of years before they filmed there, right?
Correct. Well, it was shut down about 3 years. They shut that down, and they closed it in 1990. I was in there when it was still occupied, and there were still prisoners in there. So that would have been in the late 80s, 1980s. There were still prisoners in there.
Definitely upped the danger factor as well.
Absolutely. The guard was right by my side all the time. They used to check our tools before we went in and counted all the tools and pieces that we had, and then they counted them when we walked out to make sure that everything was still with us. Wow. Didn't lose anything. Now,
Shawshank Redemption was one of those movies that when they released it in theaters, it was not a huge theatrical hit. It was a smaller movie, and it wasn't until it kind of hit the secondary video market after it got all its Oscar nominations that everyone saw it. So do you remember when you saw it for the first time?
You know, I do recall when it was being shot, because that was a big, for Mansfield, that was a big thing. You know,
Sure.
there was some money being spent in town. You know, the actors were brought in. They were spending money on the reformatory to get it into a condition and compliance where they could shoot a video or shoot the movie in there. But the first time I actually seen the movie, at that time I would have been a young man, and it may not have appealed to me. So I believe I was probably in my late 20s when I watched it. So you're right, it was a sleeper.
It's one of those movies, too, you were talking about. It may not have appealed to you as a young man, but you know, one of the things I love about film is that if you hit a movie at the right time of your life, it really just speaks into whatever
resonate into you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep.
So when you watched Shawshank, and you watched it just again last night in preparation
I
for
did.
this,
I got ready. I did my homework.
who's your favorite performance in that movie? Which one that sticks out to you?
It has to be shared between Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman, or if you want to use their cast names, you know, Andy Dufresne and Red, if you will. But you know, Morgan Freeman just did an awesome job through that movie. You know, with the narration and you know, with the roles that he played.
Yeah.
So I'd have to say he probably knocked it out of the park.
And I think that's when America found out that Morgan Freeman should just be narrating everything all the time.
Absolutely, his voice is so calming and speaks with such he commands. You know, the whatever he says, almost like it could be gospel.
Oh, absolutely.
After he says it.
Well, that's why he played God, right?
Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So when you come to this movie, you know, I think of so many scenes that stand out to me. The first time that Andy plays the aria for everyone in the courtyard, and then, you know, the sequence where Brooks gets out of prison, and that's always like the most heartbreaking part for me.
It sure is, yeah.
What sequences, what scenes in the movie really stick with you?
You know, oddly enough, when the first few times that I seen the movie, it might have even been, you know, on television, and I did not see the first probably 10 seconds or the first 30 seconds of the movie until I watched it 3 or 4 times. And that's when Andy's sitting in the car and he's drinking a bottle of whiskey.
Yep.
He's got an old Rosewood Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, and he's drinking it, and he's got the gun. And that to me is kind of, you know, puts you in a frame of mind of understanding where he was at and how distraught he was at that time. Yeah. So that to me in the beginning is kind of interesting that I missed that part. I just think there were so many aha moments through the whole movie, but probably my most favorite is when the warden is so upset that, you know, Andy is no longer in his cell. Where is he at? And he's throwing around things, and he's pissed, and he throws the one piece of marble or quartz through the paper, and you hear the clink, 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 and you just hear that stone dropping what sounds to be like a mile down to the bottom of a well. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then you get that
part.
great like camera shot after he rips the poster down, and it kind of pulls back all the way through the tunnel that he made. Yeah.
Yep.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned the beginning of the movie, too, because I had the same experience. I don't know if maybe I had just seen it for the first time on TV, and they cut that scene out, but I feel like it wasn't until I actually bought the DVD that I saw the first scene of the movie. And it really is. It's a key to understanding,
it is.
First of all, that he's not guilty. Yeah, I'm really shocked that you've had the same experience as me. I think TNT has something to answer for.
Yeah, maybe they touched it up a little bit as it got further along. Yep.
So what other I see that you've taken notes on the movie.
Well, one of the things that I thought was a little interesting is I was trying to kind of wrap myself around the timeline and how long were you know, if I was really to immerse myself into this movie and to think it was real and all this was happening, was how long were they in jail? You know, was he in prison, and how long was Red in prison, and how long was Brooks there, and you know, things like that, and it kind of helped me really truly understand, you know, when someone's put in prison, they're 40 years is 40 years.
Yeah.
if we were to use kind of the timeline of the movie, in 1949 is when he would have been sentenced into prison. And then during the scene, as the movie evolves, a young man arrives on the scene by the name of Tommy, and he's kind of a rough and tough punk kind of guy, and that's when he starts to put two and two together and kind of lets the cat out of the bag. And that was in 1965, according to movie timeline wise.
Right.
So he'd been in prison a long time, so that was kind of neat for me to think about that, and to think that Brooke mentioned that he was in prison from 05 or 06, I believe, is when he was sentenced to his life sentence.
You get that great scene when they let Brooks out, where he's kind of first encountering everybody having an automobile. You think about how long it's been that he didn't even know what it looked like, and now I think it's the late 1950s, early 60s when he gets out, and everyone's got him, and he can't cross the street. And you think about what it really must be like for these guys to try to adjust, not back to normal life, but to a culture that's moved on from them.
Absolutely. And even if you think about the point that they didn't have some of the things available to them, televisions and modern conveniences that would keep them in communication, be it phone or internet, things like that, with what society is doing. Those guys were essentially locked away. And they had no idea what was going on other than what they heard, through other inmates and things like that.
And you get that really cool setup that they do to mark the passage of time, where when Andy first goes into prison, I think he has a poster of Rita Hayworth.
Absolutely.
And then when he escapes, I think it's Raquel Welch. You can definitely see how times have changed.
I think the warden calls her fuzzy pants or something like that. Absolutely. So I think that for me was like the timeline was kind of cool too, in my notes that I kind of...
Well, that's where that movie really ends up going to, because, at first it kind of seems like a standard prison movie. And you really see the relationship with Red start to grow. And by the end of the movie, it's not a story about prison anymore. It's not even really a story about the redemption of the prison. It's those two guys learning to form a bond. And, when you get that final shot of them on that white sand beach, it's an emotional movie. I got to say, I had a little bit of the... Field of Dreams tears coming up in my eyes at the end.
It didn't choke me up like that, but I think for all of us, being or maybe to know that somebody was treated that unjustly, finally got what they deserved. And to see him on the beach, in the sun, and and I prefer for me the beach and hot weather, versus the cold Ohio weather. That is just something I cherish, and to see someone that's at a beach like that, or that's where I'd want to be.
Sure.
Say a Watneo, that's where I'd want to be.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for sitting down with us today. I know that the cold may not be your preference, but we Ohioans appreciate that you're toiling away, making bourbon even now.
Awesome. Thank you.
You guys are doing great work.
Well, great. I appreciate you letting me tell you or bend your ear a little bit about what we do here, and a little bit about a movie that I just like to sit down with a bowl of popcorn and watch every so often. So thank you very much.
That's Mark Morrison, founder, CEO, and master distiller at Minglewood Distilling Company.